This is Land of Havilah, Joshua chapter 11. This chapter and the last one are intense on geography. If you're listening by audio, you might want to watch the videos as well for chapters 10 and 11 at landofhavilah.net so you can see the maps. But if you're just listening, you can easily get the gist of it. In the last chapter, Israel bulldozed roughly the southern half of the Promised Land. Naturally, the kings of the northern half have taken notice as we go to verse 1. When Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of it, he sent to Jobab, king of Madon, to the king of Shimron, to the king of Akshaph, and to the kings who were on the north in the hill country, in the Arabah south of Chinnereth, in the lowland, and in the heights of Dor on the west, to the Canaanite on the east and on the west, the Amorite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Jebusite in the hill country, and the Hivite under Hermon in the land of Mizpah. Comment, that's the northern part of the Promised Land, roughly the northern half of it. Hazor is the chief city of it. It's a coalition of all the north. Verse 4. They went out, they and all their armies with them, many people, even as the sand that is on the seashore in multitude, with very many horses and chariots. All these kings met together, and they came and encamped together at the waters of Merom to fight with Israel. Comment, the waters of Merom are near the chief city of Hazor, about 25 miles north of the Sea of Galilee. They're gathering at the waters of Merom. Moses told Israel in Deuteronomy 20, verse 1, quote, "When you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses, chariots, and a people more than you, you shall not be afraid of them, for Yahweh your God is with you, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." End quote. Verse 6. Yahweh said to Joshua, "Don't be afraid because of them, for tomorrow at this time I will deliver them up all slain before Israel. You shall hamstring their horses and burn their chariots with fire." So Joshua came suddenly with all the warriors against them by the waters of Merom and attacked them. Yahweh delivered them into the hand of Israel, and they struck them and chased them to Great Sidon and to Misrephoth Maim and to the valley of Mizpah eastward. Comment, in other words, Israel chased the multitude of troops north, west, and east. It's a complete rout because in verse 8, quote, Yahweh delivered them into the hand of Israel, end quote. This couldn't have been successful without Yahweh. Deuteronomy 4:38, these nations are greater and mightier than Israel. Deuteronomy 9:1, their cities are fortified up to the sky. In other words, they have high walls. Israelites of the previous generation were so terrified of what they saw in the land, they refused to enter it, Numbers 13:25 through 33. And there are things going on in the unseen angelic world to account for Israel's success. Exodus 23:20, 23:23, 32:34, 33:2, and Joshua 5:13. One of the angels in particular appeared to Joshua and said he was the commander of an entire army of them, Joshua 5:14. He was quite the serious type. He had a sword, not a harp, Joshua 5:13. He didn't come to be friends with anyone. He was faithful to Yahweh and not to Israel or anyone else, Joshua 5:14. Yahweh told Moses, quote, "Don't provoke him because he will not pardon your disobedience, for my name is in him," Exodus 23:21. So he's a great asset if you're on Yahweh's side, but woe be unto you if you provoke him. Going on. They struck them until they left them, no one remaining. Joshua did to them as Yahweh told him. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots with fire. Comment, Israel doesn't have any horses and chariots and doesn't need any. Psalm 20, verse 7, quote, "Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of Yahweh our God," end quote. Now Israel has finished chasing and killing all the troops they can find in every direction, and Joshua is going to reorganize them for a systematic march through all their population centers. Verse 10, Joshua turned back at that time and took Hazor and struck its king with the sword, for Hazor used to be the head of all those kingdoms. They struck all the souls who were in it with the edge of the sword, utterly destroying them. There was no one left who breathed. He burned Hazor with fire. Joshua captured all the cities of those kings with their kings, and he struck them with the edge of the sword and utterly destroyed them, as Moses, the servant of Yahweh, commanded. But as for the cities that stood on their mounds, Israel burned none of them except Hazor only. Joshua burned that. The children of Israel took all the plunder of these cities, with the livestock, as plunder for themselves, but every man they struck with the edge of the sword until they had destroyed them. They didn't leave any who breathed. Comment, they killed everyone in every city, burned Hazor, but kept the rest of the cities for themselves with the plunder. Verse 15. As Yahweh commanded Moses his servant, so Moses commanded Joshua. Joshua did so. He left nothing undone of all that Yahweh commanded Moses. Comment, Yahweh is giving Joshua direct instructions from time to time, but Joshua is also doing everything Moses told him to do. Now coming up, a summary of the land they've taken so far. Verse 16. So Joshua captured all that land, the hill country, all the south, all the land of Goshen, the lowland, the Arba, the hill country of Israel, and the lowland of the same, from Mount Halak that goes up to Seir, even to Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon under Mount Hermon. He took all their kings, struck them, and put them to death. Comment, that's from the desert in the far south to Mount Hermon in the north by Lebanon. Verse 18. Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. Comment, it says that all this took a long time, but how long is that exactly? From information in Joshua 17, verses 7 and 10, it took maybe up to 5 years. What we've been reading about is only a summary of what happened. And there's still more land outside the current boundaries yet to be conquered, and there's even land inside those boundaries, Joshua 13, 1 through 7, that they don't have complete control over. But none of the remaining inhabitants are an immediate threat. The inhabitants of the land have seen what Israel can do, and they're thoroughly intimidated. Joshua 10:21, quote, none moved his tongue against any of the children of Israel. Verse 19. There was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel except the Hivites, the inhabitants of Gibeon. They took all in battle, for it was of Yahweh to harden their hearts to come against Israel in battle, that he might utterly destroy them, that they might have no favor, but that he might destroy them as Yahweh commanded Moses. Comment, Yahweh had mercy on the Gibeonites by putting it in their hearts to make peace with Israel and enabling them to obtain that peace by trickery, but no one else tried to make peace. Now coming up, a couple of lines about the giant Anakim people who live in the south. They're great and tall, Deuteronomy 9:2. Israel used to be terrified of them, Numbers 13:33. Verse 21. Joshua came at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from all the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua utterly destroyed them with their cities. There were none of the Anakim left in the land of Israel. Only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod did some remain. Comment, Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod are Philistine towns on the southern coastal plain. They still have some Anakim. Much later on, Goliath will come out of Gath, 1 Samuel 17:4. Verse 23, So Joshua took the whole land according to all that Yahweh spoke to Moses, and Joshua gave it for an inheritance to Israel according to their divisions by their tribes. The land had rest from war. Comment, Joshua took the whole land, meaning just the areas mentioned so far. There's more land yet unconquered. Yahweh said that he wouldn't give them all the land at once, Exodus 23:30, but starting now we're entering a peaceful time. Joshua 12 is next at landofhavilah.net. Joshua 12. This is the map of Joshua 11. This is the definite location of Hazor. The king of Hazor was the head of all the kingdoms of the northern promised land. When he heard what Joshua and Israel had done to the southern part of the promised land, he organized a massive coalition in the northern part of the promised land to go up against them. The city of Hazor, the leading city of all the northern kingdoms, was well identified in the 1950s by Israeli archaeologists. The ruins have been designated as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, which is an organization of the United Nations. If we zoom in on the satellite view, we can see the excavation of Hazor. Zooming out, the troops of the coalition were from Madon, Shimron, and Akshaph, approximate location of Akshaph, the northern hill country, the Arba south of Chinnereth. Chinnereth is the Sea of Galilee, so the valley, the Jordan Valley south of it, the heights of Dor on the west, and from the land of Mizpah, somewhere under Mount Hermon. The coalition included Canaanites, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, and Jebusites. They gathered together near Hazor at the waters of Merom. Zooming in, around these waters, the troops that gathered there were as the sand of the seashore for multitude. Joshua came suddenly to the waters of Merom and attacked them. Yahweh delivered the coalition into Israel's hands. Israel chased and struck them in all directions to Great Sidon, Mizrephoth-Maim, somewhere near Sidon, and the valley of Mizpah eastward until there was no resistance remaining. Then Joshua gathered the troops again, and they struck Hazor with the sword, left no one breathing, and burned Hazor. That was the only city they burned. They captured all the other cities of the northern coalition, killed everyone, left no one breathing, but they kept the structures of the cities intact for themselves and kept the plunder, including the livestock. The last 8 verses of the chapter summarize what Israel's done so far. They've captured all the hill country, all the southern desert, also called the Negev, all the land of Goshen, which is somewhere in the northern part of the southern conquest, the foothills, the Arba, which is the valley of the Jordan River and the Dead Sea, the hill country of Israel from Mount Halak, which is somewhere in the far south, all the way north to Baal Gad, which is somewhere in the valley of Lebanon under Mount Hermon, perhaps here. The only cities that made peace were Gibeon and 3 nearby towns of the Hivites. The Anakim were a great and tall race that struck fear in the previous generation of spies about 40 years ago in Numbers 13:22. They were part of the reason that Israel refused to enter the Promised Land at that time. Joshua cut them off from Hebron, Debir, here's the estimated location of Debir, and Anab, estimated location. But there were still some left in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod are cities of the Philistines on the coastal plain, and there will be a thorn in the side for a long time to come. Otherwise, Israel took all the land shown by the points on this map, plus they already took a lot of the land over here on the east of the Jordan River during the days of Moses, which has already been assigned to Reuben in this area, Gad in this area, and the half-tribe of Manasseh in this area. The last verse of the chapter says the land had rest from war.